Hello, everyone, and welcome to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University and our Aviation Outlook webinar. I'm Alan Stolzer, Dean of the College of Aviation at the Daytona Beach campus. Presented by the Deans of the Colleges of Aviation at Embry-Riddle's 3 campuses, Aviation Outlook is a live webinar that features key aviation and aerospace leaders discussing the current state of business and what the future holds for this most dynamic and vital industry. For our 8th webinar, it is our pleasure to welcome 2 Embry-Riddle alumni who are airline captains, Alyse Adkins and Michael D. Captain Alyse Adkins is a flight qualified supervisor on the Boeing 757 and 767 at UPS with over 8,500 flight hours. UPS is the 4th largest cargo airline worldwide and flies to 850 destinations in 200 countries with a fleet of 267 aircraft. Joining UPS in January 2015, Alyse is currently in daily operations as an assistant chief pilot and an aircrew program designee, performing evaluations for initial type ratings on the 7.5 and 7.6 and evaluating continuing qualification proficiency checks. Prior to UPS, she was a Czech airman at Republic Airways, followed by a short stint as an air safety investigator for the NTSB. Alyse graduated from Embry-Riddle with a bachelor's degree in aeronautics in 2013. She's passionate about promoting careers in aviation for future generations and mentoring young female aviation professionals. Captain Michael D. is the Managing Director of Flight Ops for Republic Airways, overseeing 2,000 professional pilots and a fleet of more than 200 Embraer 170 and 175 aircraft. Republic provides flights operated under its major airline partner brands of American Eagle, Delta Connection, and United Express, with more than 1,000 daily flights to 100 cities in 40 US states, Canada, the Caribbean, and Central America. In his nearly 20 years at Republic, Michael has been involved with fleet aircraft acquisitions and mergers, and is an integral part of the team that brought the concepts of threat and error management, line ops, safety assessments, and advanced qualification program to the airline. He also worked as Republic's Director of Flight Training and oversaw a team of more than 150 in-house flight training professionals. Before transitioning to management, he was a Czech airman and aircrew program designee on the Embraer. Michael graduated from Embry-Riddle in '97 with a bachelor's degree in aeronautical science. Captains Adkins and D, welcome to Aviation Outlook. Great to have you.
Thank you, Alan. It's great to be here.
Before we learn more about your interesting careers, I'd like to get your thoughts on the state of the airline industry today. We are obviously going through something very unprecedented, and a lot of our friends and colleagues have suffered some career setbacks, to say the least. I really appreciate you both being with us today to talk about this and other issues. Alyse, the cargo industry has played a critical role in transporting personal protective equipment such as masks, gloves, gowns, and other things during the pandemic. How has UPS fared during this time? And have you increased or decreased operations?
Well, thank you again for the opportunity to be a part of this webinar. You know, most people are aware that at UPS, the most busy time of the year is typically around the winter holidays, which, you know, ranges from about November until February. And if you go back to think about when COVID really increased, it was back in February and March of this year. So we really haven't had much of a chance to have any downtime. It's been all hands on deck. You know, since peak of last year, our volume numbers are equivalent to what they are during our peak season. And of course, UPS is an industry leader in healthcare logistics, so providing critical assistance is a global effort to combat the pandemic, and obviously it's been a huge focus for us. So to answer your question, yes, pilots are very, very, very busy, but it's not just the pilots. It's also, you know, across the entire UPS organization worldwide. I'm proud to say that we've all put 110% into, you know, trying to pull together to make sure that we can do what we can to serve our customers and our communities.
Excellent. Michael, Republic is the second largest regional carrier in the U.S. How is your company adjusting to this new environment as your partners American, Delta, and United have cut back on their schedules?
I'd also like to echo thank you for inviting us. I'm really excited about doing this webinar. As far as Republic goes, we've been adjusting on the fly. We are, 6 months into this pandemic, and we still deal with not so much day of cancels, but cancels that are, 48, 72 hours out given to us by our code share partners. No airline has ever had a plan on the shelf for what we're experiencing right now. Initially, back in April, we had daily meetings where we were talking about what our staffing is going to be, where we're going to operate, where we're going to park airplanes, what airports can we park airplanes, and then once we put the aircraft into a parking situation, the maintenance that is required. And then we quickly turn that around to, okay, what can we do to make sure that we're keeping our crew members and our staff safe? So we have multiple meetings about the things, making sure that we have headquarters cleaned and our dispatch centers cleaned, and then we split our SOCs. So some of our dispatchers are here at our headquarters on the north side of Indianapolis, and some of our dispatchers then were relocated to our training center on the south side of Indianapolis just to increase social distancing. Mm-hmm. Then the FAA came out with their SAFO, and the SAFO provided air carriers some guidance as to how to handle things, masks, social distancing, trying to encourage crew members to only ride vans with other crew members, those kinds of things. Temperature checks. So we supplied our crew members with thermometers so that they could do temperature checks prior to showing up for work, just encouraging them that if you feel sick, stay home. And then, of course, the concept of modifying our cleaning programs. So what we clean, how we clean, when we clean, all of that got modified. We incorporated maintenance tasks for making sure there's additional face masks on the aircraft for our passengers and our crew members, as well as Santicom wipes for our flight deck crew members, as well as Purell wipes for our passengers. And then now we have passenger mask compliance. That's a big thing that we're dealing with right now.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. There are certainly lessons to be learned from this crisis in every industry. And once we get on the other side of all this, we're going to look back at this time. What do you think the airline industry will have learned from this? Michael, how about you first?
Well, we will definitely have learned a lot about chemicals that kill viruses. That's for sure. Another thing I think we're going to walk away from is we don't need as many people in a headquarters environment that we thought we needed. This COVID thing has certainly forced us to rely on people to work remotely. And I think a lot of back-end office people have done that very, very successfully. Mm-hmm. And of course, one thing that we never thought of is that passengers, customers now look at the safety of an airline judged on how clean the aircraft is. Mm-hmm. So hopefully all of the things that we've learned about cleaning aircraft won't go away once we're on the backside of this.
So safety takes on a new dimension, doesn't it? It's not only,
it does.
It's not only arriving at the destination, but it's also the cleanliness of the aircraft. And you're absolutely right about the issue of working remotely. I think we've all learned that there's a lot of things that can be done by teleworking or Zoom working or whatever the term is these days.
And the FAA has been very receptive to new ideas. We've recently been approved to have our dispatchers work remotely.
Wow, fascinating. How does that work?
Courtesy of Zoom, we have the ability to watch them on camera. So, and it's a voluntary program. It's out for bid for our dispatchers right now. So we've got the OpSpec approval to do it. We don't actually have anybody doing it just yet, but it should be right around the corner.
Excellent. Alyse, how about you? Same question. What do you think we are going to learn from this?
Well, I mean, it goes without saying that the magnitude of COVID-19 and the effect that it's had on the world is unprecedented for our times. And just like parenting, there's no rule book for their directions or instructions on how to navigate through this. I think for me and for us, in the past we've had innovation and we've been able to adapt by just making changes minute to minute, sometimes second by second, to do what we need to do to ensure that we have a smooth operation. And sometimes things happen that we don't count on, but just being able to adapt to those changes and the different, especially worldwide, there's been so many different rules and regulations and guidelines that we have to follow with this COVID-19. So I think that once we give rise to some of these new approaches that we're taking on, when it comes to this type of pandemic that we've never been faced with before, our company will be stronger, and I think the world will be stronger, and as individuals will also be stronger.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Well, you both work in very different parts of the airline industry, as I described earlier. Alyse, you were at Republic actually before you went on to UPS. What attracted you to flying for UPS?
Well, I think before I can answer that question, I need to give you a little bit of a snapshot of my background. I started flying when I was very young, 14 years old, in fact. I went to high school in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and my high school was right next to a local airport. And I would see little airplanes flying around as I'm sitting there in French class trying to figure out what I'm saying. And I thought, wow, that would be a really interesting thing to do. So I asked my principal actually in high school if I could skip out on study hall, and I don't think I used the word skip out, but I asked if I could use my study hall period to do something that would better advance my career. And believe it or not, he said yes. He said that I could leave study hall twice a week, and I could go take flight lessons. Mm-hmm. And all I had to do was to show him my logbook. And I think it was one of those things where you just never know that what he's going to say until you ask. So I think that would be a good lesson that I would tell students that are, or anybody that's listening about, taking chances and taking risks. You just never know what they're going to say unless you ask. So anyway, that really gave me a step forward on my career. And so I went to Vincennes University after I graduated high school, and I went from private pilot to CFII in 11 months, and I completed my associate's degree as well. They hired me there as a flight instructor, and I did that for a little while, and I kind of hopped around to other areas and flight instructed for a few years, and then I got hired by Piedmont Airlines, flying de Havilland Dash 8s. I used to say Dash 8s, but now that UPS has 747 Dash 8s, it causes some confusion. So I'm talking about the propeller ones.
Got it.
So I did that for about a year, and then I got hired at Chautauqua, which was part of Republic, and I was there for about 9 years. I was a check airman. I worked on the AQP programs, some getting that started, and I realized that was in the mid to late 2000s, and I realized that the airline industry was kind of in an economic downturn at that point, and places weren't really hiring. And in order to make myself look, more attractive, I needed to do something to better myself. So that's when I enrolled at Embry-Riddle, and I enrolled in the online worldwide campus. And in Louisville here, actually, they had some satellite classes going on. So a couple times a week, I went to class as a full-time captain at Chautauqua. So it was a lot to juggle, but it turns out it was the best decision I ever made, because in one of those classes, I sat next to a retired UPS pilot, and he told me all about some of the great things about UPS and asked me what my career goals were. And we talked quite a bit, and he became a mentor to me. He talked about how UPS, you're part of a family, and they have so many opportunities, and how they invest in their people, and the career and development opportunities that they have, and all that sounded like something that I was really interested in. Plus, they've been around since 1907, so I think it's a pretty stable company. So that's really where I became interested in spending the rest of my career at UPS, and I'm lucky that it's worked out for me, and I still have many years left to spend here.
Excellent, thank you for that. I'm curious, what was that principal a pilot?
He was not, actually. So yeah.
just very accepting of what you wanted to do to advance yourself.
He was, and I was a good student, and I was responsible. So he put that trust in me, and I knew that I could not break his trust. So it really was a great opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Michael, what appealed to you about flying for Republic? You've been there quite a while now.
Well, like Alyse, I didn't get hired at Republic. When I first graduated college, I couldn't be picky about the airline that I could go to work for. And that first airline I got a job with was a company called Express One International. It was a 727 freight operator out of Dallas flying for the US Postal Service. They went out of business just prior to September 11th. Luckily, the contacts I made at that airline, one of them became the director of operations of a very small airline called Shuttle America in Hartford, Connecticut. Hartford, they were flying one -8, de Havilland -8 300 at the time. But we're in the process of acquiring the Saab 340s from Chautauqua Airlines. So they were looking for pilots. So I was lucky to get in the ground floor of that expansion for Shuttle America. Shuttle America got bought by Republic Airways Holdings, which was the parent corporation for Chautauqua Airlines, where Alyse was at. And I just got wrapped up into that dynamic work environment. The crazy thing about Republic is flying for both or all three of American, United, and Delta is we get to see a wide variety of flying, whether it's flying for United in Chicago and going up to locations in Canada, or flying for American out of Miami and going into the Caribbean. So the best thing about Republic is the variety of flying that our pilots get to experience.
Excellent. If I sense a theme in both of your responses, it's kind of being flexible and adaptable and seizing opportunities to advance your careers. So, and I think that would be some good advice for students entering the industry, especially today. So both of you are in management. I want to pose a regulatory question for you. What are your thoughts about the FAA's notice of proposed rulemaking on establishing and maintaining a pilot records database? Who wants to tackle that one?
I'll do it. This is kind of near and dear to my heart. I listened to the webinar with Robert Sumwalt a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about how he thinks this could have had an impact, maybe avoided the Atlas Air accident in Houston. I think the concept of this is outstanding. I am a little concerned with it being a government-run website. All of us that have tried to use IACRA at any given time can understand what issues that may cause. From an AQP airline standpoint, we already send our training data to the FAA. However, it is de-identified. So I think in some aspects, this rule requires us to do duplicate work. I wish there was a better way to streamline that process. But in today's day and age, I do think that there is a way for us to see the training of a pilot from private pilot all the way through his airline transport career, and for the airline to know exactly what kind of pilot they are getting. And it would benefit the pilot and the airline, because the airline could then streamline the kind of training that they would develop for that person based on the history they have with candidates with whatever skill set they're bringing into it.
Mm-hmm. So supportive in concept, but there probably needs to be some adjustment in how it's executed. Alyse,
Yeah.
you were about to add to that?
Yeah, I was going to agree completely. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it would have some potential improvements, especially when it comes to efficiency. And, it'll streamline some of the record reporting and requesting processes. But, and of course, I think it would allow for more informed hiring decisions for air carriers and actually for all, I guess it would be for 135 companies and such as well. But I am concerned how cumbersome it may be and costly, and I'm a little bit concerned that it will actually provide its intended objectives in the end. But we'll see how it plays out.
Okay, Alyse, let me ask you to check the positioning of your microphone. Your volume seemed to go way down there just recently. You are a daily operations assistant chief pilot. Since you're in a management position, I assume you're on a reduced flight schedule? What are your duties and responsibilities in that position?
So my official title is I'm a flight qualified supervisor. So while I have some of the same responsibilities as regular line pilots, I also do other roles as well. First and foremost, I'm current and qualified on the Boeing 757 and 767. So I'm internationally qualified, so I fly worldwide. But what makes UPS unique is, that we have different positions and roles that are available to folks in the aviation industry. And that's really what appealed to me. As a flight qualified supervisor, I don't fly quite as much as regular line pilots do, which works well for me because I have a young family at home. I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. So being gone on long 14-day trips just wasn't something that I really wanted to get into right now. Plus, I wanted to do greater things in leadership at UPS. So, as a flight qualified supervisor, one of my duties and roles and responsibilities right now is I am one of the daily operations assistant chief pilots. So, in addition to flying for currency and proficiency, and now for company demands with all the extra flights that we're doing, I also support the operation. I provide support to our pilots. I'm a subject matter expert. So what that means is we could have a flight that has an emergency or a question about an MEL, and they would call and I would offer support. I aid with COVID-19 related issues. I work with international guidelines and restrictions. I work with the dispatchers. I sit right there with some of our flight control management as well as maintenance management, and we all work together to ensure the safe operation at UPS. And that's what my current role is. I'm also an APD and a simulator check airman on a 7576. So I give type ratings as I'm appointed by the FAA to do that. And I'm also on the GO team as an assistant GO team leader. So in the unlikely event or hopefully we don't have that happen, but if we have a crash, then I would assist in that as well.
Mm-hmm. You are certainly well qualified and filling a lot of roles there. So congratulations for that.
Thank you.
Michael, you were a line pilot for about 13 years. You were on the executive council for the pilots union for part of that time. And now you are managing director of flight ops. What led you into a management role, and what does a typical day for you look like?
Management role. When I graduated, my first job out of college was a ground school instructor for that 727 operator I mentioned before. And as part of the role of being a ground school instructor, you got to do a lot of maintenance test flights, which usually meant you were flying with other management people. During that time, I became very good friends with the chief pilot of Express One, and he then told me that I was too smart to be a line pilot, and he wanted to bring me into management. So without knowing anything about it, he made me the manager of crew scheduling for that small carrier. Right out of college, I had management roles, and then that same chief pilot became the director of operations for Shuttle America. So when Express One went out of business, he brought me up there, and I was a line pilot there on the Saab for quite a while. I had some young boys. I was based at home. It was a great time in my life to just be doing out and backs. But then, even then, I was occasionally be brought in on special projects from headquarters. So that's how I got involved with threat error management and LOSA, bringing LOSA to Republic, and then AQP to Republic. And then a couple of friends of mine thought, hey, we should go run the union, which we did that for a little while. That same person then became a vice president at Republic. And when the director of training position opened up, he said, you would be great for it. And I said, no, I'm not interested. So he played a little dirty pool and told my wife I would be great for it. And then my wife told me I would be great for it. So then I did what any good husband would do and just applied for the job because my wife asked me to. But I was honest when I interviewed. And I said I would want to make big changes to the training department. And I didn't think that was something that Republic was interested in. But lo and behold, they offered me the position. So I had to make a decision. So I sat down with my wife and family, and we made the best decision for the family, which was to uproot us from Central Ohio and move over to Indianapolis. And I was director of training here for about 4.5 years, and I absolutely loved that job. But then when the managing director of flight operations opened up, I transitioned over here. Now, what a daily my daily schedule is meetings after meetings after meetings. Pre-COVID, it was a lot of fun things to talk about, expansion, we were doing RMPAR approaches, so developing the RMPAR approaches in the training organization, and then making sure we had the OPSPEC approval, and then making sure the data was going back to the FAA to show that we know what we're doing. Now with COVID, it's a lot of managing notifications. So with the CDC, anytime a passenger is tested positive and flies on an aircraft, that crew member's names have to be sent to the CDC. So through our network partners, we have to gather all that information and send that to them. So we get a few of those every single week. And then just managing call-offs and dealing with chief pilots and the unions and those kinds of things.
Excellent. Congratulations on your career as well.
Thank you.
So you've got 20 years at Republic now. Can you talk a little about how you've seen the company grow and evolve over the past several years? What big changes have you seen?
The one thing that Republic, and Alyse could say this when she was here too, we have never been stagnant. So like I started at Shuttle America, we had one airplane. Now we have, well, including our parked fleet, we've got over 230 Embraer 170 and 175s with a network stretching from Halifax, Nova Scotia, all the way down to, I think our furthest point right now is probably Monterrey, Mexico. And just about any city east of the Mississippi, we touch with our dominant hubs of Chicago, Newark, LaGuardia, DC. Our pilots do some of the most challenging flying available to us. So every day they're shooting the expressway visual into LaGuardia or the river visual into DC. So one of the best thing I get to do is on days I want to, I get to choose to go fly. I am still current and qualified. So on sunny days like today that we have here in Indianapolis, it's a good management day to go fly.
Sounds good.
But we've constantly going through changes. Like I mentioned earlier with RMPAR, before that we were looking at changing the avionics equipment on the aircraft. So we have some of the older E-jets in the world because we were one of the first customers. In fact, we have the oldest E-jet in the world in our fleet. So we're still flying the older avionics package. We were pretty close to upgrading that to the newer avionics package that is available on the aircraft. We're looking to do some things with that, such as CPDLC and data link communications to the air traffic controllers. Because we are so dominant in the Northeast, that would make our reroutes out of LaGuardia and Newark significantly faster. The things we can do to make our airline more efficient in the future is the things that are going to make us successful going forward. And even through all of these COVID stuff, we haven't stopped looking at the way to improve the operation.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Alyse, we are very focused here at Embry-Riddle on increasing female enrollment in our degree programs in the College of Aviation and especially in our aeronautical science degree program. And I know that's an area that you are passionate about, and you've participated in a lot of events over the years to increase exposure of the industry to young women and girls. Can you share a little about your efforts and what the future might look like in terms of having more females in the cockpit, and also your interesting story regarding your flight to Oshkosh?
Yeah, that was probably one of my favorite aviation memories that I've had so far in my career. But I've done a lot of work with middle schools and high schools and even younger than that, elementary schools, just introducing young women and young men as well to all of that aviation has to offer. And when I go in there, the first question I ask is, so what am I? Of course, I'm in my uniform, and none of them guess a pilot. And that to me, it just blows me away. And we get to having a conversation about why. And they said, well, I just didn't know that girls could be pilots. And to me, I still don't understand that, because it was something that I knew I wanted to do at a young age, and there are no aviators in my family. I'm the only pilot. So I'm not really sure where that came from. But, if I can do one thing, I guess, in my career, is I want to show that more women and more young women that we can do it. There's no difference between me and Michael or anybody else. I think part of the problem is if young women can't see it, if they don't see the role models in the industry, because let's face it, I think there's only about 6% of airline pilots that are women, then to them it just doesn't exist. So we need to get more successful women out there, and we need to show them that, you know, we can fly aircraft, we can work on airplanes as aviation maintenance technicians, we can be air traffic controllers, we can even run the airline from the C-suite. And so I think that educating the public, and particularly young girls, and you know, introducing them to clubs and groups and chapters and other organizations that are designed for supporting young women would help. And of course, I'm pleading to all men and women out there that be a mentor, because it doesn't take being a woman to mentor another young lady. Some of my best mentors in my life are men, and I think that's equally as important as well.
Mm-hmm. And how about your flight to AirVenture?
I forget, Oshkosh. So I was asked back in 2016 to be the captain on 767 flying into Oshkosh, and to me that was the greatest honor, because I've never been to Oshkosh before, and that was always a dream of mine. So what better way to show up than to actually fly in there on a 767? So it was myself and another female captain, and we also had female mechanics and female dispatchers, and it was an all-female crew, and we represented UPS at the Women in Aviation Day it was Women Venture Day on Wednesday. And I tell you, to this day, I've made some great relationships with some young girls that I met when I flew in there, and I still talk to them and I mentor them. And I think the future for women is looking brighter when it comes to getting the numbers up, but we just have to keep pushing, you know, supporting them, and we have to make sure that we have the role models in place for them.
Excellent. That flight had to be a thrill.
Oh, it was. I'll show you a picture. What, right behind me is a picture, actually. So it's. Okay.
As a programming note to our audience, I'm excited to let everyone know that we have an upcoming Aviation Outlook webinar that will be devoted entirely to diversity in aviation. We have some very special guests for that one, which will take place on October 7th. So plan your calendars. And thank you, Alyse, for the work you've done in that regard as well.
My pleasure.
Michael, Republic operates a fleet of about 200 Embry-Air for 3 different carriers, as we've mentioned. Talk a little bit more about what that means, the aspect of 3 different major air carriers in terms of managing the operation. You alluded to it earlier, but if you could expound on that, I'd appreciate it.
Well, we do a really good job at Republic of making sure, from a crew member, from a pilot standpoint, flying the aircraft is flying the aircraft. Whether the only difference would be when they land in Newark flying for United, they're going to park on the C gates, and if they land in Newark parking for American, they're going to park on the A gates. Now, sometimes it's actually hard to remember which codeshare am I operating. So when you make your passenger announcements, you either A, don't say either American Eagle or United Express, you just say Republic, or B, you write it down on a napkin or something so that you remember. But then also you have to remember where you're going to park. So the only way we differentiate that within our flight system is through our flight numbers. So from a dispatcher standpoint, they know if they're working a 3000 desk number, well, then that's a United number. And then our American and Delta numbers sort of share the same flight ranges. But from a pilot standpoint, it isn't much different other than where we're parking. However, it does make it challenging because you can fly a 4-day trip, and one night you're going to overnight in Halifax, Nova Scotia in December, and the next night you could be in Key West. So packing is certainly a challenge, but you get to see the entire East Coast. So it's really nice.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. You know, it might surprise some people to know that the regional airline industry operates close to, I think, 40% of all scheduled passenger flights in the U.S. Over 60 U.S. airports, those with scheduled service, only have regional airline service. So as demand for air travel has dropped, it seems that regional airlines can play a big role in helping their main line partners maintain some level of service to many of these cities. How is Republic doing that?
We're providing flexibility to United American and Delta. So with COVID now, we're doing a lot of flying that used to be flown by 737s and A320s. Prior to COVID, we were doing a lot of expansions into new markets where the market couldn't support a mainline aircraft just yet, but they would bring a regional carrier in there. One thing I think that people would find interesting is that LaGuardia Airport, which everybody knows is a very busy airport, or Washington National is a very busy airport. Republic Airways is actually the largest operator in both of those major airports. So it's not just small outlying cities like Fort Wayne, Indiana, that regional carriers really support, but it's larger operations with the frequency of business travelers, with people going back and forth between Washington Reagan and LaGuardia is a big hub for Republic. And I think coming out of this pandemic, there's going to be some markets that lose their service, with Transstates, Compass, and soon to be ExpressJet ceasing operations. That's going to be some lift that's no longer available in the system.
Mm-hmm. Do you anticipate Republic picking up some of that in terms of those cities?
I don't know, because the Transstates and ExpressJet is a majority of 50-seat flying.
Mm-hmm.
The Compass flying, we were getting 30 Compass aircraft prior to the pandemic, so we were going to get some of that, but they were shifting that Compass flying that was for Delta on the West Coast. They were moving it to the East Coast, and we had opened up a base in Boston last year to accommodate for that. But I think as the cards get shuffled again, I'm sure we'll see some shuffling of our route structure.
Sure.
We used to fly a fair amount out of Denver that I don't think we will go back to for quite some time. Houston, which is a crew base for us, is closing October 1st because we're not doing any flying out of Houston either.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Time will tell, won't it?
Oh yeah, and by this time next year, it'll be completely different.
Yep. Alyse, you worked on the passenger side of the airline industry as well for quite a while. What surprised you the most when you went to work for UPS?
Well, I think the first thing is there is a common misconception that UPS only flies at night. And while, yes, we do have a big operation at night, we also do a lot of daytime flying as well. So I knew that somewhat when I started at UPS, but until I actually started flying the line some and realized, wow, there's a lot of daytime and I've seen the sun more than I thought I was going to see it. I think that's the first thing. And second, anyone who has gone from flying passengers to flying cargo like I have, you might flinch when I say this because I think I'm the only person that I've found that will say this, but I miss the passengers. I'm a people person, and I really enjoyed walking through the terminals and talking to the people, and I miss the interaction. And while flying for UPS is amazing because technically we have 20,000 customers every flight, behind us, I miss seeing the smiling faces of people as they deplane and they've just landed to go see their kids or on their honeymoon. So that's really the most surprising thing for me, about going from passengers to cargo.
Mm-hmm. UPS certainly does a lot of daytime, but a lot of the flying is at night. And I'm just curious what you do, what actions you take to help pilots adapt to that type of environment or that type of flying schedule.
Well, night flying does have its challenges. I'm not going to, try to say that it doesn't, but you have to figure out a way to mitigate those challenges. And of course, UPS has mitigation strategies. We place the highest emphasis on safety. So through SMS and through the fatigue risk management program and all of that, we have mitigation strategies set in place, but also our rest and duty requirements meet or exceed regulations. So that does help, but it's important to recognize that fitness for duty is a shared responsibility. It's not UPS's responsibility. It's also my responsibility. So when I know that I'm going to be flying, especially flipping my clock around with kids, it's a challenge. But I think that the number one thing you have to keep in mind is you have to have a support system at home that recognizes the importance of being rested and being fit for duty, because obviously it's a safety issue if you're not. So, my husband and I have a very, very clear plan. We call it the bat cave, where I come down to the basement where there's blackout curtains and it's dark and it's cold, and I do my best resting and sleeping away from all the craziness of the house. But it's something that we both have to buy into. And it was very clear when I started at UPS that this would be a challenge, but it's working for us and we have a plan in place.
Excellent. A question for both of you. As you know, there are a lot of pilots not flying right now. They're off for what has really been extended periods of time and not flying aircraft or simulators. And I guess I'm wondering about that from a safety standpoint when flying begins to pick back up. What actions do you think the airlines should or are taking to ensure the proficiency of the pilots who've not been in the cockpit in some time? Michael, what are your
I
thoughts?
think we were going to rely on our AQP program. So we've got crystal clear qual standards throughout our AQP. And each one of our instructor evaluators knows what those qual standards are for each maneuver that they end up doing. So anybody that comes back off of an extended period of leave will go into the simulator for some sort of training, whether it is their official continuing qualification event or just a refresher for landings. They will get some. And then depending on where they fall in the training cycle, they may need some operational experience, some OE following that. And then our line instructor evaluators have qual standards for that too. And it's no different than taking a 1,000-hour Embry-Riddle graduate and then turning them into airline pilots in 100 days. So they're just going to hold them to the same standard, with the understanding that once they sign that person off, whether it's from a long leave or from initial training, that you're signing that person off to fly your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother from point A to point B. So the training standard doesn't change. They all understand that. We have a meeting coming up about that. Our fourth quarter of the year is our instructor evaluator meetings, and it will be a topic of discussion throughout those meetings to make sure they all understand what we're going to be dealing with coming in the first quarter of next year.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Alyse, do you have any additional thoughts?
Well, I think Michael did an excellent job answering that question. I will add, though, that I also feel that there is a personal responsibility that pilots have as well. If you've been off for a considerable amount of time, obviously there's a lot of changes going on, and change management is a big thing. UPS is trying to manage all of the changes, and they're all good changes. We've recently got the large display system in our 7576s, so there's been a lot of changes going on, but you have to stay in the manuals. And just because you're not actually flying an airplane at that moment, you can't not be up to date on what's going on.
Very good. The regional airline industry is really the primary entry point for many of our students who have worked hard to earn their degree and who are hoping to work as professional pilots. Given where we are and the situation we're in now, what advice do you have for them? Alyse, how about you first?
Well, it goes back to what I said when we began this conversation, is you have to just be able to adapt, and things are not going to go as you had planned. I can name probably 50 things that from the beginning of my airline career, my pilot career, that did not go like I thought it was supposed to go. But looking back on it, I'm a better pilot now, or I'm a stronger person now. So you just have to stay the course. It's funny actually that you asked this question, because I just discovered 2 days ago that my CFII expired on July 31st, and I forgot to renew it. So I now lost my CFII, but I look at that as, it's a good opportunity for me to get back in a small airplane again. It's been years since I've flown a small single engine airplane. So you have to try to be optimistic and take the negative challenges and the things that you think are a negative thing and turn them into opportunities and, ways to grow. And I think that, me going to go fly GA again will make me a better pilot in a 767 too. So there's just a lot of things. It's all about the way that you look at things.
Mm-hmm. Attitude's really important, isn't it?
Like,
And we can help you with that requalification if you
I
if you
might be
want.
calling you because
Michael, do you have any additional thoughts?
Yeah, my advice for students would be never stop learning. Learn something from every single person that you fly with, something good or something bad, but make sure you take something away from every single person that you fly with. Never let yourself get complacent. You're never going to know it all. I've been in the industry for 20 years. Every single time I fly, I learn something new about myself, the airplane, personal interactions with other people, whether it's air traffic control, ramp, ground, whatever the case may be. Always be willing to learn. Aviation is a very small community, so you never know. Your student today may be your boss tomorrow, so treat them that way. And hopefully they'll do the same for you. And the one thing I wish I could teach, or the one thing I wish that there was a course that would teach you, and even Embry-Riddle can't come up with this course, is situational awareness. Embry-Riddle, all four-year aviation accredited schools do a great job of teaching stick and rudder skills. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to correlate to taking you from 5 minutes ahead of your Cessna 172 to 5 minutes ahead of your Embraer jet. That's situational awareness. So if I could teach situational awareness, I'd be rich. But it not only is it a term in aviation, it's in a professional setting. We have people now who, in social media, they'll post something on social media, not being aware of who the audience is, and they end up getting themselves in trouble. So that's situational awareness also. So I think from a student's perspective, that's something you need to be conscious of going forward for the rest of your career.
Mm-hmm. So really good advice for our students. And I'm imagining some would be, those probably graduating sooner rather than later, or who have recently graduated, are really worried about their careers and how and what to be doing between now and the time of the recovery, however long that takes. Any thoughts about that in terms of, additional education, additional certificates or ratings, or additional something? What should they be doing to kind of fill the gap between them graduating a program like ours or others and the time that presumably a regional will be hiring again?
I would recommend, finish a degree, which is what I did. Like I said, I only had an associate's degree for the longest time. And then back in 2011 or 2012, I decided that I needed to make myself more attractive and make my resume stand out among the big pile that I'm sure now these, regional airlines are going to be faced with, and major airlines as well. So make yourself more attractive by even doing community service. I know UPS is a huge supporter on supporting your community, and it's amazing how those things can really pave the way for your future. You never know who you're going to meet or what opportunities you're going to find when you do those things. And finish your degree. Keep studying. You can always study if you have your eyes set on a specific carrier. You can always start studying some of the manuals for that aircraft. I mean, it's hard to tell where you'll end up, but it doesn't hurt to get all that knowledge that you can, especially if it's a little bit of a downtime.
Mm-hmm.
Michael, I
Michael,
would add to that to stay motivated. Don't lose sight on the prize and continue to challenge yourself. One of the things we see with new hires coming into our programs are, they got a job doing, I don't know, pipeline flying or skydiving, rather than finding a job doing 135 because it was just easier. Well, just because it's easy doesn't mean it's going to correlate to good flying at an airline. Embry-Riddle does an outstanding job of preparing you to transition from a general aviation aircraft into a jet transport category aircraft. Don't get complacent. There are reasons why they do things at Embry-Riddle that won't make sense to you. And I can say this as a graduate because I was in your shoes, that I was like, I don't understand why we have to fly this airplane this way. This doesn't make any sense. But when you make the transition to a jet transport category aircraft, you're like, oh, okay, now it's easier. So continue to learn do it the Embry-Riddle way, because when you get to the airline, you're going to understand why it was the Embry-Riddle way.
Yeah, and just to add one more thing to that, keep an open mind, because, just because you think you have your career path all sketched out exactly the way that you think it's going to go, it probably won't. So keep an open mind, because I know for me that really helped open the door for different opportunities.
Excellent. That goes back to that adaptability, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
I love it. Community service, eye on the prize, stay motivated, do it the Embry-Riddle way. Lots of good advice there. These webinars go so fast. Let me skip down to a few questions that have been submitted by our audience. So this one is specifically for Michael D. What aspects have you used from college that helped with your career? Any recommendations for certain classes?
That is an outstanding question. So just yesterday, I went on the Embry-Riddle website to try to remember what some of the courses were that I took in college.
Mm-hmm.
And as I scrolled through the curriculum for aeronautical science, I can honestly say there isn't one class that I don't use, whether it's technical writing, because I wrote manuals for quite a while, to psychology, which by far was my least favorite course in college, to turbine engines, use that all the time. So every single one of them, flight technique analysis, world navigation, every single class I use throughout my career. So I would love to be able to tell you that there's some courses that just don't bother with. The curriculum is outstanding if you want to become an airline pilot. And they know what they're doing.
Very good.
And they didn't pay me to say that either.
I can attest to that. Alyse, I'll direct this audience question to you. What was it like to move from flight crew position to management, and how did you do it?
Honestly, it was something that I feel like is in my blood from the beginning. Even when I was at Chautauqua, I worked a lot with the management there, working on the AQP program. At the time, Chautauqua was not AQP, so I assisted some of the management team as a regular line pilot at Chautauqua to kind of work through that process. And to be honest with you, management and leadership has always been something that I've been passionate about. So to me, it felt natural, and I haven't had any, issues going from one to the other. It's just something that is built into the way that I think.
Do you see yourself staying in management?
Absolutely.
Okay. How about you, Michael? Same question.
Well, do I see myself staying in management?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, for the time being, because I have, like Alyse, I have young kids. My oldest is 14, my youngest is 9. It's more important to me to be home when they want me there for birthdays or sporting events than it is for me to fly a big airplane and be in an overnight in Paris. Mm-hmm. Would that be nice? Yeah, I suppose it would be, but being a father is more important to me. Mm-hmm. What got me into management was I like being part of the solution. I never wanted to be somebody who brought up a problem but then just walked away from it. So I really enjoyed being part of the solution. When I was at Chautauqua and I brought on the threat error management program, it was because I came to the DO at the time and I said, we've got a real problem with CRM. And our CRM program was probably something that they bought from US Airways back in the late 1990s. And it didn't really look like it had been touched since then. Mm-hmm. So he sent me around the industry and I got the opportunity to go look at CRM the way United was doing it, look at the way CRM that Continental was doing it, looking at that CRM at Southwest, and then taking all of that and developing a threat area management course at Chautauqua. Mm-hmm. And then based on that, I got wrapped up into the LOSA program. Our CRM program brought our threat area management program brought our LOSA program on. And then I got wrapped up into AQP because I've always had I've been interested in training and always wanted to make the airline better at training. So I've always kind of had that because I want to be part of the solution. I don't think I'll ever be in the position where I'm just going to be like, nah, whatever. So yeah, I'll probably always have I'll always be in a way involved in it.
Very good. Michael, I appreciated your earlier comments, positive comments about Embry-Riddle. I'll give you the opportunity to do the same for Republic. What's the best part of working for Republic?
By far, it's the people. No, for a little while, back in like, I don't know, 2009 to 2011, Republic probably wasn't really a very good place to work. We had a problem with management to pilot group, with the pilot group to flight attendants. It just wasn't a very fun place to work. Our executive leadership team has spent a lot of time and energy in changing that culture. And I think we've really turned the corner on it. It'll never be done. If you look at companies that have, really positive employees like Apple or Google, they always stress the culture. So culture is something that we really stress here. So we'll never finish that. We'll never lose sight of that, but it is in our guiding principles and our mission statement that we want to make sure that we have the best people, the best operations, so that we can provide America with the regional airline of choice. And that's exactly what we go for every single day.
Perfect. Thank you. Alyse, how about you for UPS?
Well, absolutely, it's the people. I mean, that goes without saying, I think. But for me, as part of the management team and flying with all the wonderful pilots that I fly with as well, it's the people inspire you, and the management inspires you to do better. I mean, I always want to do a better job, and I always want to do more. And I think that speaks volumes for the culture and the type of company that you work for when you come home and you don't feel like you go to work the next day. So I can say that with 100% certainty that it's nice knowing that, and there's some days, don't get me wrong, there are days, but majority of the time, that's why we all got into aviation, because you don't feel like you're working a day in your life. And UPS definitely has that same type of, gives me that same type of attitude every single day.
It's a great company. Another audience member asked, how will the early retirements of pilots happening now affect the already projected shortage 3 to 4 years from now? What do you think about that? Michael?
Well, I think the early retirements now is a result of aircraft that are being parked. So if you look at places out in the desert where Delta and United and American have hundreds of airplanes parked, so the retirements now are because there's just no work for them. Whether that has a long-term impact 5 years from now, we'll wait and see. But luckily, enrollment's great at Embry-Riddle, so we have just some people right behind them ready to fill their shoes.
Mm-hmm. Alyse, any other thoughts?
I agree with that, and I don't really think that there is an honest answer to that question. There's no way that we can tell or that we'll know exactly how this will play out. Even before COVID, the retirements and how we were going to backfill those positions was a concern, but I think we had a little bit better of a grasp and a feel on how we were going to manage that. But COVID has obviously thrown a wrench into everything. So time will tell, and we just have to stay the course.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely a crystal ball question, and mine is, I haven't polished mine lately, so I appreciate those answers. Neither one of you, I would assume, have any doubts that the industry will bounce back very strongly. It's just a matter of when. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely.
Okay. Very good. Well, these hours go by so quickly. Thank you so much for taking the time. Both of you, I know our audience enjoyed getting your perspectives on a lot of tough questions, and really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your thoughts with us. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
I want to let everybody know that our next webinar is going to be on September 23rd at 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And at that time, we'll welcome Embry-Riddle alumna Kim Becker, President and CEO of the San Diego County Regional Airport Authority. Ms. Becker is responsible for the management and oversight of the County Airport Authority and San Diego International Airport, which generates $11.9 billion annually in economic impact for the Southern California region. So we'll talk with her about managing a major American airport, the impact of the pandemic on airport operations, and future plans for San Diego Airport, plus answer your questions during the webinar. Thanks once again to Captains Alyse Adkins and Michael D., and to all the people behind the scenes and those of you who join us from around the world that help make Aviation Outlook possible. And don't forget, you can watch videos of our previous guests on our webpage. Just Google Embry-Riddle Aviation Outlook. Thank you all and good night.